So, Elder Scrolls Online or Black Desert Online? Which one should you get into? They're both really good, but they are definitely different, right? So let's take a look at what really sets ESO and BDO kind of apart from each other, right? And which one might appeal to you. And then we'll probably take a look at some of the community's thoughts on the two games. So let's jump in. So starting with ESO first, think of ESO as this huge open world RPG that you can either explore with your friends or play completely by yourself, right? You can spend hours just wandering around, finding hidden quests, reading all of the in-game books, which some of those can be really interesting to read, especially if you're into the lore. But this game really focuses on the story and the world's history, right? Which it is Elder Scrolls, so it kind of has all of the Elder Scrolls into this game. The quests are pretty deep. They are voice acted, and it's actually one of the reasons why I get an itch to play ESO is because of the story driven content. It is really easy to play by yourself. You can go through a lot of the game solo, exploring the world, finding delves, which are like these underground caves, and just kind of finding mysteries out in the open world, kind of just by yourself at your own pace, right? But just, with all the solo content, there is a lot of group content, which I would actually probably say ESO has more interactive group content than BDO, right? There are dungeons, there are trials, which are kind of similar to raids. There's huge PvP battles in Cyrodiil where, you can fight for resources and kind of control castles, right? That's pretty much going on 24/7. There's also small scale PvP like 4v4v4, which I'm actually kind of surprised that they don't have like arenas into the game yet, like 2v2 or 3v3, but it is what it is, I guess. Now, ESO's combat is action oriented, but you do have a limited hotbar, right? Typically, you're able to have 5 active skills on that hotbar plus an ultimate, which then can be swapped if you have a secondary weapon to allow you to have another 5 more skills. So kind of 10 total, right? Not including your ultimate. And you can also do light attacks and heavy attacks. And then while you're able to aim your abilities to some extent, there's still kind of a sense of locking on to the targets. Most skills do have kind of a short cooldown, so you can't just spam the abilities one after another. So being able to just kind of have proper timing and proper resource management is really going to be important. And then you have the ability to kind of light attack weave in between the abilities to kind of maximize your damage output. There's blocking, there's dodging, and then you can also interrupt enemies' attacks, right? So all of those are important aspects of ESO's combat, right? Enemies will kind of telegraph or kind of tell you when they're about to do a big attack, right? Kind of giving you a chance to block or even interrupt them, right? So stopping the attack and then potentially stunning the enemy. Dodge allows you to avoid damage entirely, but does cost stamina. Another layer of complexity comes from the 2 weapon sets that you can swap between once you reach level 15, right? So each weapon has its own skills, each class has its own unique skills, and then as you're exploring the world, you'll unlock different skill lines that also have unique skills and passives. So this really encourages build diversity and allows you to adapt to different situations, right? For example, you might have a damage focused setup on one bar and then maybe a healing or support setup on the other bar. Now it might not be most efficient, but you can definitely do that, right? They are also in the near future, which I just found out here recently, they're going to be allowing you to have subclasses. So essentially you can combine classes together, like you can have a necromancer blended in with the Templar, which I'm not really sure how they're going to balance that, but I do love having the freedom and the ability to kind of build your character however you want, right? I personally like ESO's combat, and I love the Necromancer class. I'm just a sucker for that type of class, but I can wield a great sword. I can do great sword attacks and abilities while also having a staff, using spells, while also using class specific Necromancer skills where I can summon minions, right? So there's a lot of customization that you can do with your abilities and your class, but there are a few people who don't really like ESO's combat, and they kind of find it to be clunky. So it's one of those things where you'll just have to kind of try out. Now, BDO. So BDO is my main game, so maybe I'm a little bit biased here, but BDO is all about the combat, the graphics, kind of that just endless freedom to do whatever you desire, such as PvE mob grinding, where you just find a grinding spot and you just kill endless mobs. There are dungeons, but they're more kind of focused on solving puzzles to kind of get to that final boss, which the final boss does have some pretty crazy mechanics. They actually require you to turn your brain on. There are solo bosses, I would say kind of similar to like Dark Souls in a way. There are 5-person party bosses that requires team effort to be able to complete it, that are also a lot of fun. There's a lot of life skills in this game, like fishing, hunting, sailing, gathering. I mean, there's so much. There's so many life skills to kind of dive into and get efficient with. There's PvP, such as large, massive guild-based node wars. You have Red Battlefield, which is like a team deathmatch. You have Arena of Solaire, which is an equalized 3v3 arena. So yeah, there's a good amount of content, and the game looks amazing and it feels really good. The combat with BDO is truly action oriented, right? It's kind of like a fighter type game with its combat, but I would say hands down BDO has the best combat out of all of the MMOs, and you know, honestly, and just in general single player games too. The combat is probably one of the biggest factors that has kept this game so popular, right? And like with the combat, like you have a bunch of skills that you can like use certain key inputs to use, and there are some hot bar abilities that you can put on your hotbar to, like, you know, click a specific number like 1, 2, or 3 to use the ability. But mainly if you really want to be like the best of the best and efficient, most of the time you're really going to have to master down the key inputs for the various skills. And then you have like certain protections like super armor, which protects you from CCs, but you can still get damaged. There's frontal guard, which blocks the incoming damage from the front part of your character, but you can still get CC'd from like either the side or the back. And there's a bunch of different other things, like you have stuns, stiffs, floats, knockdowns. So the system can get pretty complicated and complex, but it's really, really fun. Yeah, especially when you're trying to like pull off crazy combos and you're like dodging or blocking when needed. But unlike ESO, BDO is more kind of about the grind, right? With the storytelling in BDO being really not that good. They have improved over the years, but it's not the main selling point. You're going to be spending a lot of time fighting monsters, going to various different grind spots, you know, to initially level up and then just get kind of better gear and earning silver, which is the game's money. And it can get pretty repetitive. That's kind of like the main loop. You're going to a grinding spot to get money, to get better gear, to repeat. And then of course you can sprinkle in life skills into the mix as well, which actually a lot of people mainly just play this game just for the life skills. So you can do either or. But again, the combat is what really makes this game so satisfying. And the world of BDO also just looks really amazing, especially for like a 2015 game, right? I think it's probably one of the best looking MMOs on the market still, right? There's just so much detail in the environments. Now, there are kind of some annoying like pop-ins that happen when you're going from like one area to the other, but for the most part, it's amazing. The character customization is amazing, right? So there's a lot of appeal to the game, but I think the biggest drawback, especially for the Western players, is just that repetitive kind of grind aspect. Also with BDO, it's going to be mainly more focused on solo play, right? There are some group activities, obviously, but the game is really focused on solo play, which I think is a big appeal for BDO, is the ability to be able to play this game completely by yourself and not have to rely on a group that may hinder your progress of your character. But just know that BDO definitely tends to swing to more of the solo aspect than a group aspect. While like ESO, you can, right, obviously play the game solo, but there's also a lot of group content in ESO. So I feel like that's kind of important to also kind of mention. Obviously BDO is more pay to win, with ESO just having kind of more cosmetics that doesn't really affect your gameplay. Also with BDO, you're locked to a specific gender with the classes, which in my opinion is just super annoying, just stupid, especially in today's age, but it is what it is. And you know, there's really no build diversity when you're just picking a class, right? You pretty much have to pick a class that kind of fits your style, which the classes, they have a awakening kit and a succession kit with different weapons. But you know, I'll say despite the lack of build diversity, there are a ton of different classes in this game, like 29 classes, I think, which then if you add the 2 different variations, the succession and the awakening, right, you're looking at like over 50 different classes to choose from. So let's compare the progression paths between the 2 games. So with ESO, it's pretty straightforward, right? You're going to level up to level 50, which is the max level. And then on the journey to level 50, you're going to be unlocking skill points, which can be used to unlock new abilities and various skill lines, right? Which you have your class skill line, your weapon skill line, your armor skill line, your guild skill lines, crafting skill lines, right? There's a lot of skills, right? And you can also morph these abilities, these skills, to make them even better, or you can just completely change how they work. You can get more skill points by finding sky shards, which are kind of scattered around the world to kind of just further help you to explore the world, right? And you can also get points by completing certain story quests and certain dungeon challenges, right? And then after level 50, you will unlock champion points, which allow you to further customize your character with more passive bonuses. And then you kind of start to direct more of your attention to specific gear sets, which can be obtained through, you know, questing, dungeons, trials, or PvP. So there's a lot of freedom in how you can build your character, and you can easily, you know, change things later if you want to, right? Especially if you want to try something different. Also, you can explore, you know, the world and or do the quest however you want, because everything is scaled to your level. Now with BDO, in all reality, it's really just about your gear score. Okay. So, you know, you're still going to level up and you're still going to learn skills, but gear is super important, right? Upgrading your gear can be like a whole separate game with enhancing, failing, and sometimes even making your gear worse, right? It can be frustrating, but also really rewarding. You're hitting that dopamine, and it's like, I want more, potentially. Depends on how you are, right? But once you get that piece of gear, you just feel so satisfied, right? It's just kind of it's a different kind of progress, right? And it's just more focused on how powerful your items are than just kind of your character's level or skills. All right, so I wanted to just take a look at kind of what the community thinks between like the 2 different games, which this person who made the post has already deleted the post. So I'm not really sure what happened, but I still have access to the comments here. So we'll take a look at that. We're not going to go over every single comment, but we'll take a look at a few of them. So first up here, honestly, there are more differences than similarities. Best just to look up some videos highlighting the game's features to get a feel for them. But for a very brief overview, ESO, story driven, yes. Horizontal progression, yes. So we're probably gonna see a good amount of hate on the combat for ESO. Again, like I said, I appreciate the combat. I think it's fine. I think it feels decent, right? It's not as good as BDO's, but I think I would probably say ESO is probably number 2 for me if I had to rate combats. BDO, weak story, 100%. Very grindy vertical progression, yeah. And I would say great combat. Great combat. Not good, great. Kind of important that ESO gives you a huge amount of build options. That's a good point, yeah. Build diversity, which I spoke about earlier, with few classes, whereas BDO has many classes, but effectively no build options. Da-da-ding. Outside of PvP, BDO's combat is the definition of bland. Outside of PvP, BDO's combat, okay, maybe the activities that you're doing in terms of using the combat, but the combat's definitely not. If we're looking solely at the combat, it's definitely not bland. You're running around the map in a circle, spamming the same abilities in the same order mindlessly. I don't know. Different opinion. I have a different opinion on that. There's no depth to it and exacerbated by how insanely grinded it is, how long you'll be doing it. I'm convinced its player count is massively inflated because of all the AFK systems the game has that rewards players for staying logged in while requiring no active input from them. AFK fishing, baby. Let's go. Which I don't do any AFK activities. Like, that's just not my thing. I don't like keeping my computer on 24/7. But yeah, there is a lot of AFK activities that can make you a lot of silver. ESO is more about questing and horizontal progression. It feels more like a traditional Western RPG with multiplayer dungeons and raids. More of a theme park than sandbox. Pretty standard. The combat isn't amazing. Mostly lacks monetization, though some might argue storage being behind a paywall is kind of crappy. You pay for content and cosmetics. Yeah, I think ESO's pay system is pretty fair. And I'm pretty sure you can still play the game. Like, as long as you buy the base game, like, you could still play it. You just can't play like the other DLCs, right? And so, and like all the cosmetics and all that, like, it's not really pay to win. It's just more of that convenience aspect. BDO is more about grinding and vertical progression. It's more of an Eastern MMO. Because of that, the world can feel immersive and exploratory and feel more like a sandbox in many ways. Combat is great. Yes. However, it's very PvP focused, and then there really aren't many dungeons or raids. At least that's not the focus. Someone can clarify if they added that stuff, because I haven't played in a while. Pretty aggressive monetization with paid for gear upgrades along with cosmetics. Yeah, I mean it's no secret, right? BDO is definitely pay to win. However, it's extremely expensive if you want to pay to win, right? You're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars just to get one in-game gear piece. End of the day, it's not worth it, right? I guess unless you're like a millionaire, which if you're a millionaire, you could maybe share some love with me on that. But unless you're a millionaire, it's not worth spending your money to try to pay to win. It's really not. And yes, they have added dungeons, not raids though, but dungeons. And again, you have like the solo bosses and the 5-person boss mode as well. Give them both a shot and see what sticks more. All right, thanks. I think ESO is more my thing. I don't like PvP and many MMOs, and find raids and dungeons a lot better, although I'm not the biggest fan of questing. Are really well done. Yeah, I like the questing ESO. You're like a more active participant in a story. Yep. I've been a BDO player for many years. I can assure you that PvP is not that influential. I myself have not faced another player for years. There are many ways to play without it being arenas, node wars, Blood Island, or hardcore server, but it's totally optional. That is very true. You could just strictly just play life skills. It's possible. It is also possible if you are over level 50 for someone to attack you if you're outside of a safe zone, but it's highly unlikely as it carries significant penalties for the PvP activator. It used to happen a long time ago if you invaded someone's grind spot or if someone invaded your grind spot, but now they've implemented zones where you're always alone without any other players coming in. Yeah, for the most part, pretty accurate. I would also like to add there are 4 dungeons. Raids are also done to defeat guild or world bosses. Okay, that's an interesting way of putting a raid. Well, it's not like a traditional raid, like a traditional Western MMO raid. But I guess there is a raid of people for like the world bosses, but there's really no mechanics to that. One of the games takes place in Black Desert, while the other is about elderly people looking for scrolls. Oh, that's a good one, bro. I like it. There's no one main difference. There's a ton of differences. They're completely different games, and it'd be hard to analyze them through the same lens. As a Guild Wars 2 player, I tried them both briefly. Neither stuck, so I carried on with Guild Wars 2. I'd say if I had to make a switch, I'd probably be to BDO. Really didn't care much for ESO, but that's just my preferences. Amazing character creation, BDO. Indeed it is. Indeed it is. Would you say Guild Wars 2 is a better choice if I like New World, a good combat system, light story, different builds, no PvP if possible? My opinion, Guild Wars 2 is just better than ESO in every way except for story, quest, and trailers. Trailers. ESO, story, immersion, out in the world, a whole bunch of stuff to do. Combat sucks, but maybe the new subclassing feature might fix this. Who knows? They refused to fix combat for 11 years. Gosh, it's been 11 years? Jeez. BDO, karate story, great combat, grindy. It's very grindy. New World. Love the combat, love the gathering, everything else sucks. Actually, New World's questing is actually pretty good now. They actually have they revamped the storyline, and it's actually really good. I tried to play BDO literally yesterday, couldn't get past the login screen for some kind of failed to connect problem. Tried a bunch of solutions online, gave up. Based in Europe, if that's important, just saying go for the trial account before if you didn't purchase the full game already. It's super generous with free trials. That's true. Want something chill? ESO. Want something sweaty? BDO. BDO has some chill elements too, but overall, that's the simplest way to break them down. Yeah, I don't know. I find BDO more my play style and more kind of just allows me to play kind of whenever I want at my own pace and still be kind of relevant, right? Because BDO is also really, really good with solo play. It's actually probably one of the best games for solo play. So, and my schedule is just all over the place and it's crazy. BDO is chill. You can literally grind while watching TV shows on a second monitor. That's what I do, bro. Bro, the BDO meta is the AFK fish these days. Doesn't get more chill than that. Literally half the population can be found at Velia Beach fishing. That's so true. I played both. BDO's combat's amazing. The life skill is also very well done. However, there really isn't any content in BDO. You farm mobs on repeat until you level so you can do a little bit more efficiently. Not like you get to take your progress on your character into a raid or a dungeon, which sucks. I've heard they've gutted a lot of PvP, which is concerning because there really isn't much else to do in the game. I've played a decent amount of ESO and honestly enjoyed it. I just ran around exploring the world, questing, but everything is voice acting. It's a good story game. However, the combat is just clunky and floaty and doesn't feel great. In the open world and story questing, combat doesn't matter because everything is brain dead easy. Well, it's because everything's scaled to your level. But in game, when combat and rotation matter, it gets a lot worse. Wait, what? Gets a lot worse? You're talking about like it gets a lot better, right? Yeah, I think they meant it gets better. In game, when combat and rotation matter, it becomes more difficult, right? It's not brain dead easy. This isn't on your list, but I recommend checking out Guild Wars 2. A lot of Guild Wars 2 recommendations here. I started about a week ago with the free trial and have fallen in love with the game. Great combat, immersive open world. Community seems really nice. I tried Guild Wars 2, but I couldn't really get into it for some reason. I played them both and would say BDO's risk time sync nowadays. The population of the game is hard to figure out with so many people AFK fishing and the open world is empty. You can run around for hours and never see a single player. BDO, to be honest, shouldn't even be labeled as a MMO. Come on. No, it's definitely an MMO. You'll be solo 99% of your playtime. I play it, but it just feels like it has potential to shut down in the near future. Well, look, they play it. They play it. But yes, this game really, I feel like, is designed for solo players. Right? I think that's what it does really well, is you don't necessarily have to be a part of a group to progress your character. Now, there are some group content like Guild Wars and the 5-person Black Shrine Party boss mode, right? There's some things, but yes, the basis of the game is grind, get gear, grind, get gear. But it doesn't have to be. It does not have to be. There's a whole bunch of different things you can get into that doesn't make it feel that way. It just, everyone says that because that's probably the most efficient and effective way of progressing your character. ESO, while not even close to as fun combat as BDO or even Guild Wars 2, has a solid player base and will be there supported for many years. I feel it's worth trying at least. I think it's worth trying both games to kind of see what you prefer. ESO's combat is trash, but has an amazing world and questing. Everything else is an 8, 9 out of 10. Well, I wonder what they would rank the combat then. A 1 out of 10? Black Desert's just trash. Nothing to do but grind and get ganked by a level 65 wizards. Bro, if you're getting ganked by a level 65 wizard, there's something wrong with you. They probably haven't played this game in a hot minute. Both looks bad, but Black Desert makes me cringe. Oh, what? Are you talking about graphics wise? No way. Now, I would say ESO's graphics is a little but BDO, nah, bro, nah. BDO equals single player game. ESO, true MMO. So yeah, that's kind of the post there. Kind of a good amount of hate on BDO. But yeah, so which one should you pick? Hey, at the end of the day, it really depends on what you're looking for in a MMO. If you want a deep story, a huge world to explore kind of at your own pace and more of a classic MMO feel, then probably ESO is probably going to be the better choice, right? But if you're all about kind of that fast, exciting combat, amazing graphics, you don't mind grinding endlessly, right? And maybe some like pay to win elements, then maybe BDO would be the best game to play, right? But it really just kind of depends on how you are, how your personality is. And I think the best way to find out is just to try them both, right? Try both MMOs if you can and kind of see which one you vibe best with. But hey, that's the end of the video. I really appreciate you stopping by, checking out the video, and let me know down in the comments, which game do you prefer? Do you prefer ESO? Do you prefer BDO? And let me know why. But I hope you have a great upcoming week or weekend whenever I release this video or whenever you watch this video. I hope you have a good day, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.
Sunsets on black desert sky. It's just you and I.